I should let you drive yourself today, he announced. I proposed to nothing while I chewed. Why? I demanded. I'm leaving with Alice after lunch. Oh, I blinked, bewildered and disappointed. That's okay. It's not that far of a walk. He frowned at me impatiently. I'm not going to make you walk home. We'll go get your truck and leave it here for you. I don't have my key with me, I sighed. I really don't mind walking. What I minded was losing my time with him. He shook his head. Your truck will be here, and the key will be in the ignition, unless you're afraid someone might steal it. He laughed at the thought. All right, I agreed, pursing my lips. I was pretty sure my key was in the pocket of a pair of jeans I wore Wednesday under a pile of clothes in the laundry room. Even if he broke into my house or whatever he was planning, he'd never find it. He seemed to feel the challenge in my consent. He smirked, overconfident. So, where are you going? I asked as casually as I could manage. Hunting, he answered grimly. If I'm going to be alone with you tomorrow, I'm going to take whatever precautions I can. His face grew morose and pleading. You can always cancel, you know. I looked down, afraid of the persuasive power of his eyes. I refused to be convinced to fear him, no matter how real the danger might be. It doesn't matter, I repeated in my head. No, I whispered, glancing back at his face. I can't. Perhaps you're right, he murmured bleakly. His eyes seemed to darken in color as I watched. I changed the subject. What time will I see you tomorrow? I asked, already depressed by the thought of him leaving now. That depends. It's a Saturday. Don't you want to sleep in? He offered. No, I answered too fast. He restrained a smile. The same time as usual then, he decided. Will Charlie be there? No, he's fishing tomorrow. I beamed at the memory of how conveniently things had worked out. His voice turned sharp. And if you don't come home, what will he think? I have no idea, I answered coolly. He knows I've been meaning to do the laundry. Maybe he'd think I fell in the washer. He scowled at me and I scowled back. His anger was much more impressive than mine. What are you hunting tonight? I asked when I was sure I had lost the glowering contest. Whatever we find in the park, we aren't going far. He seemed amused by my casual reference to his secret realities. Why are you going with Alice? I wondered. Alice is the most supportive. He frowned as he spoke. And the others? I asked timidly. What are they? His brow puckered for a moment, incredulous for the most part. I peeked quickly behind me at his family. They sat staring off in different directions, exactly the same as the first time I seen them, only now there were four. Their beautiful bronze-haired brother sat across from me, his golden eyes troubled. They don't like me, I guessed. That's not it, he disagreed, but his eyes were too innocent. They don't understand why I can't leave you alone. I grimaced. Neither do I, for that matter. Edward shook his head slowly, rolling his eyes toward the ceiling before he met my gaze again. I told you, you don't see yourself clearly at all. You're not like anyone I've ever known. You fascinate me. I'm sure he was teasing now. He smiled as he deciphered my expression. Having the advantages I do, he murmured, touching his forehead discreetly. I have a better than average grasp of human nature. People are predictable, but you never do what I expect. You always take me by surprise. I looked away, my eyes wandering back toward his family, embarrassed and dissatisfied. His words made me feel like a science experiment. I wanted to laugh at myself for expecting anything else. That part is easy enough to explain, he continued. I felt his eyes on my face, but I couldn't look at him yet, afraid he might read the chagrin in my eyes. But there's more, and it's not so easy to put into words. I was still staring at the Cullens while he spoke. Suddenly, Rosalie, his blonde and breathtaking sister, turned to look at me. No, not to look, to glare. with dark, cold eyes. I wanted to look away, but her gaze held me until Edward broke off mid-sentence and made an angry noise under his breath. It was almost a hiss. Worsley turned her head, and I was relieved to be free. I looked back at Edward, and I knew he could see the confusion and fear that widened my eyes. His face was tight as he explained, "I'm sorry about that. She's just worried. You see, it's dangerous for more than just me if, after spending so much time with you so publicly." He looked down. If this ends badly." He dropped his hand into his hands, as he had that night in Port Angeles. His anguish was plain. I yearned to comfort him, but I was at a loss to know how. My hand reached toward him involuntarily. Quickly, though, I dropped it to the table, fearing that my touch would make things worse. I realized slowly that his words should frighten me. I waited for that fear to come, but all I could seem to fear was an ache for his pain and frustration that Rosalie had interrupted whatever he was about to say. I didn't know how to bring it up again. He still had his head in his hands. I tried to speak in a normal voice. "And you have to leave now?" "Yes." He raised his face. It was serious for a moment, and then his mood shifted and he smiled. "It's probably for the best. We still have 15 minutes of that wretched movie left to endure in biology. I don't think I can take any more." I started. Alice, her short inky hair and a spiky disarray around her exquisite elfin face, was suddenly standing behind his shoulder. Her slight frame was willowy, graceful, even in absolute stillness. He greeted her without looking away from me. "Alice?" "Edward?" she answered, her high soprano voice almost as attractive as his. "Alice, Bella, Alice," he introduced us, gesturing casually with his hand, a wry smile on his face. "Hello, Bella." Her brilliant, obsidian eyes were unreadable, but her smile was friendly. "It's nice to finally meet you." Edward flashed a dark look at her. "Hi, Alice," I murmured shyly. "Are you ready?" she asked him. His voice was aloof. "Nearly. I'll meet you at the car." She left without another word. Her walk was so fluid, so sinuous, that I felt a sharp pang of jealousy. Should I say, "have fun," or is that the wrong sentiment? I asked, turning back to him. "No, have fun works as well as anything," he grinned. "Have fun then." I worked to sound wholehearted. Of course I didn't fool him. "I'll try." He still grinned. "And you try to be safe, please." Safe in Forks. What a challenge. For you it is a challenge. His jaw hardened. "Promise." "I promise to try to be safe," I recited. "I'll do the laundry tonight. That ought to be fraught with peril." "Don't fall in," he mocked. "I'll do my best." He stood then, and I rose too. "I'll see you tomorrow," I sighed. "It seems like a long time to you, doesn't it?" he mused. I nodded glumly. "I'll be there in the morning," he promised, smiling his crooked smile. He reached across the table to touch my face, lightly brushing along my cheekbone again, and then he turned and walked away. I stared after him until he was gone. I was sorely tempted to dim for the rest of the day, at the very least Jim, but a warning instinct stopped me. I knew that if I disappeared now, Mike and others would assume I was with Edward, and Edward was worried about the time we spent together publicly, if things went wrong. I refused to dwell on the last thought, concentrating instead on making things safer for him. I intuitively knew, and sensed he did too, that tomorrow would be pivotal. Our relationship couldn't continue to balance as it did on the point of a knife. We would fall off one edge or the other, depending entirely upon his decision or his instincts. My decision was made before I'd even consciously chosen, and I was committed to seeing it through, because there was nothing more terrifying to me, more excruciating, than the thought of turning away from him. It was an impossibility.